My name is Kimberly Dawson. I'm 36 years old. At 5:42 on a Monday morning in February, I sat alone in the surgical admissions waiting room with a hospital bracelet around my wrist, a paper cup of water I was not allowed to drink, and a text from my mother that said, "Honey, we can't make it. Your sister needs us with the kids. You understand." I read it 3 times. You understand. That was not a question. That was a verdict my family had been handing me since I was old enough to pack my own lunch. The waiting room at St. Mark's Medical Center was too bright for that hour. The television on the wall played a morning show no one watched. A man in a baseball cap slept with his chin on his chest. A woman across from me held her husband's hand and whispered something that made him smile weakly. Near the check-in desk, a nurse called names with a clipboard and a practiced softness that made fear feel scheduled. My name was next. Kimberly Dawson. 36 years old. Insurance claims specialist. Daughter who handled paperwork. Sister who understood. Patient having laparoscopic surgery to remove a large ovarian cyst that had spent 4 months turning my body into a place I no longer trusted. I had asked my parents to come, not because I needed an audience, because the surgeon had said I could not drive home, should not be alone for the first 24 hours, and might wake up scared if the procedure changed once they saw what was happening inside me. My mother had promised, my father had promised. They had both said, "Of course we'll be there." Then at 5:42, my sister Amanda had a childcare emergency. Her nanny had called out. Her husband had an early flight. Her twins had preschool drop-off. And somehow my surgery became less urgent than finding someone to pour cereal and locate missing shoes. My mother's second text came before I had finished reading the first. Amanda is frantic. "We'll check in later. Be brave. Be brave." I looked down at my hospital bracelet. My emergency contact line listed my mother, Elaine Dawson. I almost laughed. Then I didn't. Because laughing hurt my abdomen, and crying would have made the nurse ask questions. My father texted at 5:46. "Sorry, kiddo. Your sister's in a bind. Keep us posted." Kiddo. I was 36, sitting alone before surgery, and my father had chosen the word kiddo while driving to my sister's house to make pancakes. A nurse stepped into the doorway. "Kimberly Dawson?" I stood. My legs felt hollow. The nurse smiled. "Do you have someone with you today?" I looked at my phone. The screen still glowed with my mother's message. "You understand." I turned it face down. "No," I said, "not anymore." What they did not know was that the person they abandoned in that waiting room had spent the last 12 years navigating insurance policies, denied claims, prior authorizations, medical coding disputes, appeals, and provider credentialing forms for a regional healthcare network. What Amanda did not know was that her twins' serial crisis would become the sentence I heard months later when my parents needed my professional signature to fix a serious insurance problem that could cost them thousands. And what my parents absolutely did not understand was that grace is not the same thing as access. I did go into surgery alone. I did wake up alone. I did sign my discharge papers with a coworker's name as my ride because my family had decided my sister's convenience was more important than my fear. And 4 months later, when my parents sat across from me at my kitchen table with a folder full of rejected insurance forms, panic in their eyes, and the expectation that I would fix everything because that was what Kimberly did, I remembered the waiting room, the bracelet, the empty chair, the text. You understand? This is that story. Before I tell you how my parents learned that the daughter they left alone before surgery was also the one person who understood the insurance mess they created, tell me where you are watching or listening from and what time it is there. I always wonder who hears stories like this while remembering the moment family expected them to be strong enough to abandon, then useful enough to rescue. And if you connect with stories about women who were betrayed, underestimated, blamed, and quietly took their power back, like and subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. Some women do not stop being kind. They simply stop being automatic. I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, in a beige split-level house with a sloped driveway, a dogwood tree in the front yard, and a kitchen calendar that controlled our lives like a second parent. My mother, Elaine, was a third-grade teacher for 31 years. My father, Gary, worked as a regional manager for an auto parts distributor. They were good people in the way that becomes complicated when good people create unfair systems and call them family. There were 2 daughters. Amanda was the oldest by 4 years. Pretty, emotional, impulsive, magnetic, and somehow always in a crisis that arrived just before someone else's needs could matter. I was Kimberly, the younger one, reliable, quiet, organized. The child who knew where the extra batteries were, who remembered permission slips, who made copies of forms, who kept a sweater in the car because someone might be cold. My mother used to say, "Kimberly is my steady one," with pride in her voice. I did not understand then that steady children often become unpaid infrastructure. Amanda needed. I managed. That was the arrangement. When Amanda forgot her science project in 8th grade, Mom left work during lunch to bring it. When I forgot my gym shoes in 6th grade, Mom said, "You'll remember next time." When Amanda cried because she did not make varsity cheerleading, Dad took her for ice cream and told her the coach had no eye for talent. When I cried because I lost the regional spelling bee by 1 word, Dad said, "Second place is nothing to be ashamed of," then asked if I knew where the tax envelope was because he needed to mail it. My parents did not love me less. That is the part people misunderstand. They relied on me more. And reliance can become a form of neglect when no one remembers the reliable person also needs to be held. The symbolic object in this story was a navy blue insurance binder. I made it for my parents when I was 28, after my father changed jobs, and their health plan became more complicated. It had tabs for medical, dental, prescriptions, Medicare transition information, life insurance, long-term care, claims, appeals, and important contacts. On the front, I used a label maker and printed Dawson Family Insurance. My mother laughed when I gave it to her. Only you would make insurance look official. Dad said, "That's why we keep you around, kiddo." At the time, I smiled. Later, I would wish I had heard the warning in that sentence. I studied health administration in college because I wanted practical work with purpose. I was good at systems. I liked untangling problems. I liked reading policy language and finding the sentence that made a denial reversible. I began as a billing assistant at a medical office, then moved into claims coordination, then became a senior insurance specialist for St. Mark's Medical Network. My job was not glamorous, but it mattered. I helped patients understand why a surgery needed prior authorization. I caught coding errors before bills became disasters. I wrote appeals that turned no into paid. I knew which forms had to be signed by a licensed provider, which needed an administrator, which could be corrected by addendum, and which mistakes could trigger fraud review if handled casually. My family treated this knowledge like a household appliance, useful, available, not worth thanking unless it stopped working. When Amanda got married at 27, I reviewed her health plan options because she had no idea what deductible meant and was proud of that. When she got pregnant with her first child, I called her insurer 3 times to confirm network status for her obstetrician because she said phone menus made her spiral. When her twins were born early, I organized the NICU bills into binders and found a coding issue that saved her and her husband nearly $7,000. Amanda thanked me by sending a text with 7 heart emojis. Then she asked if I could also look at her hospital lactation charges. I did. When Dad needed a knee replacement, I handled pre-authorization. When Mom's thyroid medication changed tiers, I filed the exception request. When Dad's employers switched pharmacy benefit managers, I spent 2 Saturdays fixing their mail order account. When Mom lost an explanation of benefits and panicked because she thought she owed $4,800, I drove over, found the correct EOB in the Navy binder, and showed her it was patient responsibility 0. Mom hugged me and said, "What would we do without you?" I wish just once I had answered honestly, "You would learn." But I didn't. I said, "That's what I'm here for." That was my mistake. Not because helping was wrong, because I kept using that sentence to make my own erasure sound noble. My surgery story began in October. I had been having pelvic pain for months, deep and sharp on the left side, the kind that made me pause mid-sentence and grip the edge of a desk until it passed. At first, I blamed stress, then hormones, then sitting too long. Women are trained to negotiate with pain before believing it. One afternoon at work, I nearly fainted in the copy room. My coworker, Tessa, found me sitting on the floor with one hand pressed to my abdomen. She said, "Kimberly?" "No." I looked up. "No, what?" "No pretending, this is fine." Tessa was my friend, but more importantly, she was the kind of friend who understood that I could turn denial into a spreadsheet if unsupervised. She drove me to urgent care. Urgent care sent me for imaging. Imaging found a complex ovarian cyst large enough to require surgery. My gynecologist, Dr. Renner, explained risks calmly: torsion, rupture, possible endometriosis, possible ovary involvement, pathology after removal. I heard every word. I also heard none of them. I drove home that night with a folder of surgical instructions on the passenger seat and sat in my car for 20 minutes before going inside. Then I called my mother. She answered cheerfully. "Hi, honey, can you look at a letter from Dad's prescription plan later? I don't understand it." "I need surgery." The line went quiet. For a moment, she was fully present. "What?" I explained. Her voice softened. "Oh, Kimberly." That softness nearly broke me. Then she said, "Of course we'll be there." I believed her. For once, I let myself need without creating a backup plan. That was another mistake. The weeks leading to surgery were full of appointments, blood work, pre-op calls, insurance approvals, work scheduling, and the quiet fear of wondering what doctors might find once I was asleep. I did not tell many people. I told Tessa. I told my boss. I told my parents. I told Amanda because Mom said she should know. Amanda called me that night. "Oh my God, Kim. Are you okay?" "I will be." "That's scary." "Yes. If you need anything, tell me." I almost said, "Can you tell Mom and Dad not to ditch me if one of your ordinary emergencies appears?" I didn't. I said thanks. Amanda had 3 children, twins, Ava and Mason, age 5, and a toddler named Chloe. Her husband, Brent, worked in pharmaceutical sales and traveled constantly. Amanda had help. A nanny 3 mornings a week. My parents, Brent's parents, neighbors, grocery delivery, and the strange confidence of a woman who could declare herself unsupported while surrounded by people holding pieces of her life. My parents adored the grandchildren. That was not the problem. The problem was that grandchildren became Amanda's permanent emergency pass. If Amanda needed a sitter, my mother canceled lunch with me. If Amanda had a sick child, Dad left work early. If Amanda had a school event, my parents attended even when she arrived late and left early. If I had something important, the family calendar asked whether Amanda needed anything first. Surgery should have been different. I told myself surgery would be different. On the Sunday before, Mom called. "What time should we be there tomorrow?" 5:30 check-in, surgery around 7. "We'll pick you up at 5. "You don't have to pick me up. I can drive there, but I need someone to drive me home." "Nonsense. We'll take you." Dad called in the background. "Tell her I'm bringing coffee." I smiled. Dad can't bring coffee into pre-op. He says he'll drink it in your honor. That little joke stayed with me all night. At 4:30 Monday morning, I got dressed in loose sweatpants, a zip hoodie, and shoes I would not need to bend a tie. I packed my ID, insurance card, surgical folder, phone charger, and the lip balm Tessa insisted I bring. I put Milo, my cat, on an automatic feeder and told him not to judge my life choices. At 5, no one arrived. At 5:07, I texted Mom. "Leaving soon?" No answer. At 5:12, I called. Voicemail. At 5:17, I called Dad. No answer. At 5:20, Mom called back. Her voice was hushed and hurried. "Honey, we have a problem." My stomach dropped. What happened? Amanda's nanny called out. "Brent's already at the airport, and the twins have preschool. She's crying. She can't manage all 3 this morning." I stood in my living room with my surgical bag over my shoulder. "Mom, I have surgery." "I know, honey, I know. We're trying to figure it out. You said you would take me." "I know, but Amanda is frantic." "Mom, can Tessa take you?" "Tessa is working today. I didn't ask her because you said you were coming." My mother exhaled. "Don't sound like that." "Like what?" "Like I'm choosing." "You are choosing." Silence. Then Dad's voice in the background. "Elaine, we need to go." Mom said, "We'll check in later. Be brave." She hung up. I ordered a rideshare to the hospital because I had no time to fall apart. Then came the texts in the waiting room. You understand. Keep us posted. I went back to pre-op alone. The nurse, whose name was Janelle, asked who would be picking me up. My coworker, I said. Name? Tessa Monroe. Is she here? No, I'll call her. The hospital could have postponed me if I had no discharge plan. I knew that. I also knew my pain was worsening, and I had already fought insurance approval, work leave, and surgeon scheduling. I called Tessa from the pre-op bed, my voice shaking despite my effort to sound calm. She answered immediately. Why are you calling me from the hospital? Aren't your parents there? I closed my eyes. Amanda needed childcare. The silence on Tessa's end was volcanic. Then she said, I'm leaving work. No, you can't. I'm leaving work. Tessa. Kimberly, I swear to God, if you argue with me while wearing a hospital gown, I will come there and fight you before anesthesia. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again. She arrived before I went back. Not my mother, not my father, Tessa. She stood beside the bed in her work slacks, hair messy from rushing, and held my hand while the anesthesiologist explained risks. When they wheeled me away, she squeezed my fingers and said, I'll be here when you wake up. She was. The surgery took longer than expected. The cyst was removed. The ovary was saved. Pathology later came back benign. The physical outcome was good. The emotional incision was not. I woke up groggy, nauseated, throat sore from the tube, abdomen burning beneath bandages. I turned my head and saw Tessa sitting in the chair beside me, reading something on her phone, with her jacket folded over her lap. You stayed, I whispered. She looked up immediately. Of course. That of course did more damage and more healing than anything else that day. My mother texted at 1:16. How did it go? Not I'm here. Not I'm sorry. How did it go? I did not answer until evening. Tessa drove me home, picked up my prescriptions, heated soup, set alarms for medication, and slept on my couch because the discharge papers said someone should stay. My parents called at 7. I let it go to voicemail. The next morning, Mom came by with a casserole. I was on the couch, pale, swollen, and in pain. Tessa opened the door because I could not move quickly. Mom looked surprised to see her. Oh, Tessa, thank you for helping. Tessa smiled without warmth. Someone had to. Mom's face tightened. I almost smiled despite the pain. Dad came in behind her, carrying flowers from the grocery store. Hey, kiddo, how's our patient? Our patient. I looked at him. Tired. Mom placed the casserole on the counter. Amanda felt terrible. I closed my eyes. There it was. Not, I felt terrible. Amanda felt terrible. Dad said, it was just one of those impossible mornings. I opened my eyes. No, it was not impossible. It was inconvenient. Mom sat on the edge of the armchair. Kimberly, please don't make this into something. I stared at her. I had surgery alone. Tessa was there. Because she left work after I called from pre-op. Mom looked down. Dad shifted uncomfortably. We thought you'd understand, he said. I laughed once, softly, painfully. There's that word again. They stayed 18 minutes. Before leaving, Mom said, call if you need anything. I said, I needed you yesterday. She flinched. Dad guided her toward the door. After they left, Tessa came into the living room and said, I hate them a little today. I said, I do too. That was the first honest sentence I allowed myself. Recovery took 4 weeks physically. Longer emotionally. My parents sent texts. They brought groceries once. Mom tried to overcorrect with little check-ins, but every message felt like a hand touching a bruise. Amanda sent a voice memo saying she was so sorry the timing was chaotic and that motherhood was just survival sometimes. I deleted it. Not because I did not love her, because survival was not a coupon she could redeem against my surgery. At 6 weeks post-op, I was cleared for normal activity. I went back to work fully. I stopped discussing the surgery with my family. That made them comfortable. My family liked wounds best when they healed into silence. Then came June. The insurance problem arrived in a manila folder. My parents showed up at my house on a Wednesday evening at 6:10. No warning. Just the doorbell, my mother's anxious face, and my father holding the navy blue insurance binder like a child bringing a broken toy to the person who could fix it. I opened the door. Hi. Mom's smile trembled. Can we come in? I looked at the binder. What happened? Dad sighed. It's a mess. That was all he said. A mess. I let them in because I wanted to know what kind. They sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Tessa had lined up my medication bottles after surgery. Mom opened the binder with shaking hands. Inside were letters from an insurance company, a hospital system, and a specialty practice. There were denial notices, coordination of benefits forms, provider credentialing documents, and a retroactive coverage dispute tied to my father's employer retirement transition. I understood the problem within 5 minutes. Dad had changed from employer-sponsored insurance to a retiree Medicare supplement arrangement. During the transition, he had continued seeing a specialist for a cardiac condition. The specialist's office had billed the wrong primary insurer. The insurer denied for coordination issues. The provider resubmitted late. Then Dad had signed a form incorrectly, confirming something that made the insurer treat several claims as patient responsibility pending correction. The amount in dispute was $42,680. Mom's voice shook. They say we owe it. You may not, I said. Dad leaned forward. Can you fix it? There it was. Not can you help us understand, can you fix it? I looked at the forms. Some needed corrected signatures from Dad. Some needed a provider attestation. One required a licensed insurance specialist or benefits administrator to verify the timeline of coverage and submit a corrected coordination statement. I had the professional credentials and employer access to sign that type of verification in some circumstances if I could confirm records and if it was ethically appropriate. My signature could help. My knowledge definitely could. Mom reached across the table and touched my hand. Honey, we're scared. I looked at her hand. Then, at the chair where she had not sat on surgery day. Why didn't you call Amanda? Mom blinked. Amanda wouldn't understand this. No. Dad said, This is your field, kiddo. Kiddo. Again. My field. My usefulness. My signature. My steady hands. I pulled my hand back gently. I need to review everything. Dad's shoulders dropped with relief. Thank God. I held up one hand. I did not say I would fix it tonight. Mom looked confused. But you can, right? I can review it? Dad frowned. What does that mean? It means I am not signing anything until I verify the facts, understand the error, and decide whether my involvement is appropriate. Mom said, Of course, but time matters. Yes, I said, it does. The room went quiet because they heard what I did not say. Time mattered in February too. Mom's eyes filled. Kimberly. No, I said softly, not yet. Dad rubbed his forehead. We know we messed up. I looked at him. Do you? He exhaled. About the surgery. I waited. Mom said we should have been there. I still waited. Dad looked at Mom, then back at me. Amanda needed help with the kids, and we made the wrong choice. Progress. Small. But not enough. Why was it wrong? I asked. Mom's lips trembled. Because you were having surgery. Yes. And we had promised. Yes. And, she swallowed, and we assumed you would manage because you always do. There it was, the root, not malice. Assumption. The quiet arrogance of relying on someone's strength until you forget it is not endless. Dad looked down. I'm sorry, kiddo. I closed the binder. Do not call me kiddo while asking for professional help. His head snapped up. I had never said that before. Mom stared at me. I said, I am your daughter. I am also an adult woman with a profession you need right now. If you want my help, you will speak to me with respect, and you will understand that my answer is not automatic. Dad's face reddened. Not anger, embarrassment. Kimberly, he said carefully, I'm sorry. Better. I took the binder and said, I'll review it by Friday. Mom looked panicked. But the deadline is Monday. I can read. She flinched. I did not apologize. I need to pause here for a second. If you have ever been treated like the strong one until someone needed your expertise, you know exactly what that kitchen felt like. It was not about insurance forms. It was about whether help still belongs to people who abandoned you when help was all you asked for. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment and tell me what moment made you stop being automatic. And if you have not already, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. The quiet part is over. I reviewed the binder that night, not for them at first, for myself, because I love puzzles, and because insurance errors irritate me on a cellular level. The denial chain was ugly but fixable. Dad had made mistakes, yes. The provider had made mistakes. The insurer had processed based on incomplete coordination data. The retirement benefits office had sent a confusing letter. There was a path, but it required precision. A corrected coordination of benefits form. Provider resubmission with timely filing appeal. Retiree plan verification. A signed statement from Dad acknowledging the mistaken form. A professional coverage timeline summary, which I could draft but should not sign unless the plan administrator verified the underlying dates. And one appeal letter tying it all together. I could fix it. That was the problem. Competence is a trap when people only respect it in crisis. I called Tessa. She listened while I explained. "So you can save them 42 grand, she said. "Maybe. And they skipped your surgery for preschool drop-off." "Yes." "And now they're sitting in your kitchen like you're the insurance fairy." "Yes." "What do you want to do?" I looked at the navy binder. "I don't want them ruined." "That's not the same as wanting to rescue them." "I know." "Do you?" I leaned back. "I want to help in a way that doesn't erase what happened." "Then make terms." "Terms?" "Not money terms, respect terms, process terms, reality terms." Tessa was right. The next morning, I emailed my parents. "I can help you organize and prepare the appeal. I will not sign anything that requires verification outside my authority. You will contact the plan administrator and request written confirmation. You will also include Amanda in the process because I am no longer the only daughter who handles family problems. We will meet Saturday at 10. Bring all documents, login credentials, and a written timeline. Do not ask me to rush, guess, or put my professional name on incomplete information." Mom called within 5 minutes. I did not answer. She texted, "Amanda won't understand any of this." I replied, "Then she can learn." Dad texted an hour later, "Fair." That one word told me more than Mom's panic did. Amanda called Friday night. I almost let it go. Then I answered. She began with a sigh. "So Mom says you're mad again." I closed my eyes. "Careful." "What?" "Careful with the word again." She huffed. "Kim, I'm not trying to fight. I just don't know why I have to be involved in insurance stuff when you know it and I don't." "Because they are your parents too. I have 3 kids. I had surgery." Silence. "Good," I continued. "You remember that morning?" "Of course I do." "Do you?" She said nothing. "I was in pre-op alone because Mom and Dad went to your house. My nanny canceled. Brent was out of town. It was chaos." "No, it was childcare." She inhaled sharply. "That's not fair." "No, Amanda, it is exact." Her voice cracked. "I felt terrible." "Did you?" "Yes." "Then why didn't you come over after?" "I thought Mom did." "Mom came with a casserole and told me you felt terrible." Amanda went quiet. I let the silence work. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't know Tessa stayed with you. You didn't ask." That one landed. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what specifically?" She sniffed. "For letting my childcare emergency become more important than your surgery. For not telling Mom and Dad to go to you. For not checking on you myself. For assuming you'd be okay because you always are." There was that phrase again. "Because you always are." I sat down on the edge of my bed. "I am not always okay, Amanda." "I know." "No, you are learning." She cried then. I did not comfort her quickly. That felt cruel at first, then honest. Her discomfort was not an emergency I needed to solve. She came to the Saturday meeting. Late by 7 minutes, which I noted silently but did not mention because she arrived with a notebook and no children. That mattered. My parents sat at my kitchen table. Dad had documents arranged badly. Mom had printed emails. Amanda had a pen and wide eyes. I stood at the counter with coffee and began. This is not going to be a family panic session. This is a document review. We will identify the problem, assign tasks, and no one will imply I can magically fix consequences caused by ignored paperwork. Dad nodded. Mom nodded. Amanda nodded too quickly. I continued. First, Dad, you signed a form incorrectly. He started to speak. I held up a hand. I am not saying that to shame you. I am saying it because appeals require accurate starting points. He closed his mouth. Second, the provider billed incorrectly. Third, the retiree plan communication was unclear. Fourth, the insurer denied based on conflicting coordination data. This is fixable if handled correctly. Mom put one hand over her chest. Oh, thank God. I looked at her. Not fixed. Fixable. She nodded. For 3 hours we worked. Dad called the plan administrator and requested written coverage timeline confirmation. Mom called the specialist's office and asked for billing supervisor contact. Amanda created an online account for Dad's retiree plan because she was not, in fact, helpless. I drafted the appeal structure and highlighted missing items. Every time someone tried to hand me a task that belonged to them, I handed it back. Mom said, "Can you just call them? You know what to say." I said, "I'll write the language. You will call." Dad said, "Should I just give you my login?" I said, "No. You will log in and download the letter." Amanda said, "I don't understand this code thing." I said, "Read the explanation of benefits aloud." She did. She understood more by the end. At one point, Dad looked at me and said, "You do this all day?" Yes. He looked at the piles of documents. "I thought you mostly answered insurance questions." I smiled without warmth. "That is like saying surgeons mostly cut things." Amanda winced. Mom looked down. The surgery reference hung in the air. No one tried to smooth it. Good. By Saturday afternoon, we had a plan. I would draft the appeal letter and professional summary as their daughter assisting with documentation, not as an official representative of my employer. I would not sign as a licensed benefits administrator until the plan administrator provided written verification and my compliance department confirmed no conflict. Dad would sign the corrected forms. Mom would maintain the binder. Amanda would track deadlines and upload documents. Everyone had assignments. Before they left, Mom lingered in the kitchen. "Kimberly," she said. I looked at her. "I keep thinking about that morning." "So do I." Her eyes filled. "I told myself you were strong. I told myself Amanda was the one falling apart, and you could manage." "I did manage." "I know. That doesn't make it okay." "I know," she swallowed. "I think I have praised your strength because it made it easier for me to give my attention elsewhere." That was the most honest thing my mother had ever said to me. I leaned against the counter. "Yes. I am sorry." I nodded. Dad came back inside then. He had been halfway to the car. He removed his baseball cap and held it in both hands. "I used kiddo because I didn't want to see that you're grown enough to decide whether we deserve help." My throat tightened. And that's probably true. "I'm sorry I chose Amanda's house that morning." "Thank you. I was wrong." "Yes." He looked ashamed. Not performative, real. "I don't know how to fix that." "You can't go back." "I know." "You can show up differently next time." He nodded. "I will." The appeal took 6 weeks, not because it was simple, because insurance systems punish confusion with time. The first corrected form was rejected because Dad used blue ink, where black was required. I made him redo it. He complained for 12 seconds, saw my face, and stopped. The provider's billing supervisor tried to claim timely filing could not be appealed. I emailed the relevant policy language to Mom and made her read it over the phone to them. She shook afterward but felt victorious. Amanda missed one upload deadline by 3 hours, then panicked. I told her panic was not a plan and made her call the portal support line. She did. The document uploaded. Dad obtained the retiree plan verification letter. My compliance department confirmed I could provide a family assistance summary as long as I did not represent my employer or certify beyond documents provided. I wrote the summary carefully, stating facts, dates, plan coordination, denial sequence, corrected forms attached, and requested reconsideration. I signed only what was appropriate. That boundary mattered. My mother initially wanted me to sign more because your name carries weight. I said, "My name carries ethics." She did not ask again. During those 6 weeks, something strange happened. My family began to see my work. Not admire in a vague way, see? Amanda called one night and said, "I just spent 40 minutes on hold and wanted to throw my phone into traffic." Yes. "You do this all the time?" Yes. "And you don't scream?" "I use mute." She laughed. Then she said, "I'm sorry I acted like it was just paperwork." "Thank you." Dad started sending me updates with subject lines and bullet points. They were terrible bullet points at first, then better. Mom reorganized the navy binder and added a new tab labeled Appeals. She sent me a photo like a child showing homework. I wrote back, "Good job." She replied, "I see why you like labels." I smiled. Small things. The decision letter arrived in late July. Approved. Claims to be reprocessed under correct coordination. Patient responsibility reduced from $42, $680 to $1, $240, pending final provider adjustment. Mom called me crying. Not panicked. Relieved. Dad got on the phone and said, "You saved us." I closed my eyes. There it was, the old doorway. Saving them. I said, "We fixed the paperwork together." He paused, then corrected himself. "We fixed it together because you showed us how." Better. Amanda texted, "I know I only did a small part, but I'm weirdly proud of the portal upload." I replied, "You should be. Competence is built." She sent back, "Ouch. True. The public reckoning happened at my parents' anniversary dinner in August. They had been married 41 years and invited both daughters, Brent, the kids, and me to a small restaurant. I almost did not go because family dinners had a way of turning old roles back on like lights. Tessa said, "Go if you want, drive yourself, leave if needed." So I did. Dinner was pleasant at first. The twins colored. Chloe dropped a spoon 4 times. Brent talked too much about airports. Amanda looked tired but present. Mom wore a blue dress. Dad looked nervous. After dessert, Dad stood. Not fully, just enough to make everyone look at him. "I want to say something," he said. Mom reached for his hand. My stomach tightened. Dad looked at me. "Earlier this year, Kimberly had surgery. Elaine and I promised to be there, and we were not." The table went still. Amanda looked down. Brent's expression changed. I wondered how much he had known, Dad continued. "We chose to help Amanda with the children because we told ourselves Kimberly was strong and could manage. That was wrong. She should not have been alone." My throat tightened so quickly, I had to look at my water glass. Mom spoke next. "We have relied on Kimberly's strength for years while calling it praise. Then, when we needed her professional help, she helped us without letting us pretend we had not hurt her. She gave us grace with boundaries." Grace with boundaries. She had been listening. Amanda wiped her eyes. Dad said, "We are sorry, Kimberly, publicly, because our mistake was not private in its consequences." That sentence nearly broke me. For once, my pain was not being tucked into a corner so everyone else could eat comfortably. I nodded. "Thank you." Amanda then said, "I need to say I was wrong too." Brent looked at her. She turned to me. "I should have told Mom and Dad to go to you. I should have found another solution. I made my chaos the center again." Again. That word mattered. "I'm sorry," she said. I nodded. "Thank you." The twins, who understood nothing, kept coloring. Chloe dropped the spoon again. Life did not pause dramatically. Restaurants rarely know when families are rewriting themselves at table 12. But I knew. After dinner, Brent approached me near the parking lot. "I didn't realize the surgery thing happened like that," he said. I looked at him. "How did you think it happened?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Amanda said your parents helped with the kids because your procedure was outpatient and your friend was taking you anyway." I stared at him. "No." His face tightened. "I'm sorry." "Talk to your wife." "I will." That conversation was not mine to manage, for once. The months after that were different. Not perfect. Different. My parents stopped assuming I would handle every document. They asked. They learned. They made copies before calling me. Dad stopped calling me kiddo when discussing anything serious. Sometimes he still used it affectionately, then caught himself, and I let it pass when it did not feel like a pat on the head. Amanda began using a shared family calendar for true emergencies, not every inconvenience. She arranged backup childcare that was not our parents'. She complained about the cost. I said, planning costs less than damage. She said, you sound like a claims department fortune cookie. I said, and yet? We laughed, carefully. The biggest change came that November. I had a follow-up appointment with Dr. Renner. Routine imaging, nothing alarming. Still, medical appointments after surgery carry echoes. My mother asked if I wanted company, not assumed, asked. I said yes. She arrived 10 minutes early with tea I could actually drink this time. She sat beside me in the waiting room, not talking too much, not making it about her guilt, just there. When the nurse called my name, Mom looked at me. Do you want me to come back or wait here? I almost cried. Choice. Such a small thing. Come back, I said. She did. The scan was fine. Afterward, we sat in her car. She held the steering wheel and said, "Thank you for letting me come." "Thank you for asking." She cried a little. So did I. Not every repair is dramatic. Some repairs are simply a mother sitting in the right waiting room at the right time after having missed the one that mattered most. As for the Navy insurance binder, it sits in my parents' home office now, more organized than it has ever been. Amanda knows where it is. Dad knows how to log into the portals. Mom knows which documents require signatures and which require verification. I still help sometimes, but I no longer disappear into the help. The appeal approval letter is inside the binder under the tab marked Resolved. Behind it, my mother placed a handwritten note. Kimberly taught us that paperwork is care, but care is not paperwork alone. When she showed it to me, I had to step outside for air. That note meant more than the insurance approval. I still keep my own copy of the surgery day texts. Some people might say that is unhealthy. I disagree. I do not keep them to punish my parents forever. I keep them because memory softens under pressure, and families love to sand down sharp edges until old pain becomes a misunderstanding. It was not a misunderstanding. They made a choice. Then they learned from it. Both parts are true. My scar is small now, 3 tiny marks on my abdomen. Most days I do not notice them. But sometimes, when I change clothes, I see them and remember the waiting room, the empty chair, Tessa's hand, my mother's text, and the nurse asking if someone was with me. Not anymore. That answer still hurts. But it no longer defines me. Because 4 months later, when the people who left me alone needed me to rescue them, I did not become cruel. I became clear. My parents skipped my surgery to watch my sister's kids. Then they needed me for their insurance forms. And when they sat at my kitchen table with a $42,000 problem, I did help them. But I did not help as the invisible daughter, the automatic fixer, the kiddo with a label maker, and no needs of her own. I helped as Kimberly Dawson, a woman with scars, a profession, boundaries, and a signature that would not be used without respect. Thank you for staying with me through this story. I know some of you have been the strong one, the steady one, the one everyone assumes will manage, understand, recover, forgive, and still answer the phone when they need something. If Kimberly's story reached you, I hope you remember that your competence does not cancel your need for care. You can offer grace without becoming available for disrespect. You can help without erasing the hurt. And you can require people to learn the difference between needing you and valuing you. Subscribe to Ultimate Revenge for more stories about quiet women, family betrayal, silent comebacks, and the moment the reliable one finally sets the terms. So tell me, if your parents skipped your surgery for your sister's childcare emergency, then months later needed your professional help to save them from a massive insurance bill, would you refuse completely? Or would you help with boundaries they could never ignore again?